Elias was different from the moment he learned to speak. His words would either tumble out in a rush or trickle out slowly, one by one. When he got excited, his hands would flutter like a bird's wings, and people would stare. Elias was autistic. He was also brilliant, endlessly curious, and completely captivated by the world of science. As a child, he possessed a mind like a camera. He could read entire pages of a book just once and recite them back perfectly. His teachers called it a photographic memory. His parents simply called it a gift. But the world outside his home wasn't always so kind. Despite being the smartest kid in his class, Elias struggled to connect with others. His classmates would mock the way he talked, and adults often mistook his thoughtful silence for something else entirely. Yet, through it all, Elias never stopped learning. He devoured books on biology, anatomy, and physics, anything that could help answer the million questions that bounced around inside his head. By the time he was 18, his brilliance had earned him a spot at a top medical university. It felt like his future was finally taking shape. But life, as it so often does, had a different plan. At 19, Elias fell in love. At first, she was everything he had ever hoped for: kind, warm, and patient. She made him feel seen, understood in a way no one else ever had. They married quickly, perhaps too quickly, and then their baby boy, little Soren, was born. And just like that, everything changed. One day, his wife was there. The next, she was gone. No explanation, no goodbye. She just placed the sleeping baby into his arms, turned, and walked out of their small apartment, leaving him behind forever. Elias had no choice but to drop out of college. He was no longer just a young man with a dream. He was a father. The weight of it all was crushing. The sleepless nights blurred into exhausting days. The bills piled up, a constant reminder of his new, overwhelming reality. Whispers followed him through the thin walls of his apartment building. He can't even talk normally. He'd hear a neighbor say, "How's he supposed to raise a child?" Another would add, "He's so strange." Maybe she left for a reason. Some days, the depression was a physical force, so heavy he could barely get out of bed. But then Soren would cry, and in that tiny, helpless sound, something deep inside Elias would awaken a father's instinct, fierce and stronger than any pain he had ever known. He tried to carry the world on his shoulders alone for years. But finally, he realized he couldn't do it. Swallowing his pride, he asked his parents for help. They didn't hesitate for a second. His mother lovingly took care of Soren while Elias prepared to go back to school. His father worked extra hours, taking on more shifts to help with the mounting expenses. They were his rock, reminding him every single day, being autistic doesn't make you less. Your mind is a treasure, Elias. With his family's support, Elias returned to college with an unstoppable determination. His photographic memory, once a source of mockery, now made him excel in anatomy. His steady hands, a result of his focused nature, made him exceptionally gifted in the delicate art of surgery. And his empathy, shaped and deepened by years of his own pain and misunderstanding, made him a favorite among his patients. They felt his genuine care. After years of relentless hard work and sacrifice, he finally achieved his dream. He became Dr. Elias Reyes, a surgeon known for taking on cases that others had deemed impossible and winning. He cured countless patients, saved hundreds of lives, and built a reputation as a doctor like no other. He had built a life for himself and his son. But life wasn't finished testing him. One rainy evening, Elias was deep in a complex surgery when his phone began to ring. A nurse answered it for him, her face turning pale as she listened. It was the police. Soren, now a bright and happy 10-year-old, had been hit by a speeding car. His injuries were catastrophic. To survive, he needed immediate surgery, massive blood transfusions, a new kidney, and a new heart. Elias rushed into the emergency room, his body trembling uncontrollably. The world he had fought so hard to build was collapsing around him. But as the news of the tragedy spread through the hospital, it reached someone else. Someone who hadn't been heard from in a decade. Soren's biological mother, Althea, was in prison. She had been sentenced for a serious crime and was scheduled for execution the following month. When she heard that her son was dying, she broke down completely. For 10 years, she had carried the crushing weight of her guilt, too ashamed to ever face the family she had abandoned. Now she made a desperate request. She wanted to see Elias when he walked into the sterile prison visitation room. Althea was already weeping. "Elias," she choked out, her voice thick with regret. "I was so wrong. I thought you couldn't survive on your own. I thought you were too different. I was afraid. I didn't know your difference was your greatest strength. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, let me help him." The doctors had already explained the grim reality to her. Saving Soren required a living donor, and it had to happen today, not next month when her life was scheduled to end. The legal process to allow a prisoner to donate was complex and would take weeks' time that Soren simply did not have. It seemed like a hopeless dead end. But in her heart, Althea had already made her choice. During the transfer back to her cell, she quietly slipped a folded letter into a guard's pocket. It was a goodbye letter. Then, in a single, shocking moment that no one saw coming, she acted. She grabbed an officer's gun, placed it against her own chest, and pulled the trigger. She died instantly. Her last words echoed down the cold, sterile corridor, "Save my son." Her sudden death meant there were no legal hurdles. The doctors were able to harvest her heart, her kidney, and her blood immediately. Those organs, given in her final, desperate act of love, saved Soren's life. Later, the guard gave Elias the letter Althea had written. With shaking hands, he unfolded it. It read, "Elias, I am sorry for everything I didn't, for everything I failed to do. I abandoned you both because I was terrified. I saw your autism as a weakness, when in truth it was the incredible strength that carried you through every storm. Please tell our son, tell him his mother loved him, even if I showed it far too late. Let my heart beat for him now. Althea Elias cried harder than he had ever cried in his life, not with anger, but with a profound sense of grief and, finally, forgiveness. Soren eventually made a full recovery. He grew up knowing his father was a hero, not just in the operating room, but in the quiet, everyday battles of love and devotion. He also learned a powerful lesson that even people who make terrible mistakes can find greatness in their final moments. This story shows us that being different is never the same as being incapable. Elias's unique mind was what made him both a brilliant surgeon and a deeply compassionate father. It teaches us that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, but a profound act of courage. Elias only succeeded because he leaned on the people who loved him. It also reminds us that people can change. Althea's last action was one of pure, selfless love, a sacrifice that became her redemption. A parent's love can come in many forms. Sometimes it's imperfect, sometimes it's delayed, but it is always powerful. And finally, forgiveness can heal wounds that anger can never fix. By choosing compassion over hatred, Ilias not only saved his son's life, but secured his future. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that touches the heart. We'll see you next time.